Hey, this is Trish, and I wanted to do a follow-up to yesterday's video. Yesterday I did a video on Game of Thrones and violence against women. It was part commentary and part social experiment, and it went pretty much the way I thought it would. I did an extended blog post on it even, and you can read that on my website, arousedwomanblog.com. What I wanted to do was talk about violence against women, and as of the creation of this video, it's been about 24 hours or so, the only people who have left comments on my Facebook wall and on my YouTube page about yesterday's video have been men. And most of the comments have been along the framework of, well, not all men, ... and, well, what about violence against men? Now, these two are actually very true. Not all violence is committed by men, just most of it. And violence against men is actually an issue we need to talk about. We need to address this in our society because violence against men is a legitimate issue, just as violence against women is a legitimate issue. However, when you are talking about violence against women, or when a woman is trying to talk about violence against women, and men come in and say, well, what about men? What about violence against men? What you're doing is you're taking that issue of violence against women and you're still making it about men. We need to be able to talk about violence against women without men getting defensive, because we also need to talk about violence against men. However, they are slightly different issues. We need to talk about both. We need to address both in our culture, in our society, in our media, in our religions. I don't subscribe to religion, so. And one of the reasons is because of the violence throughout the history of organized religion. Now, if we talk about the violence against men, what that means is that we need to talk about patriarchy. Now, patriarchy does not mean that you automatically hate men. That's not what patriarchy is. Patriarchy is an institution that pits people and countries against each other, all for the ambition of wealth and power and status. And patriarchy harms men just like it harms women, but it harms us in different ways. So it's absolutely something we need to talk about, but we need to talk about them separately, start to deal with them separately so that we can get to the root causes of violence against women, violence against men. And then once we kind of reach that, then we can come together and address these collectively. But when you talk about violence against men, you're going to have to deal with pedophile priests. You're going to have to deal with bullying in high school because a guy maybe doesn't have muscles like a football player, or maybe he doesn't play sports, or maybe he has lots of acne, or maybe he just doesn't look or sound or just doesn't look like everybody else. Maybe he's different. Maybe he's gay. Maybe he's bisexual. Maybe he's asexual, but he gets bullied. Let's talk about the violence that happens during hazing in college fraternities. Let's talk about violence and sexual assault of men and women, but men in the military. While we're at it, let's talk about American soldiers who forcibly sodomized Iraqi boys in front of the boys' mothers in Abu Ghraib. See, we start to have to deal with a lot of things that are very uncomfortable. They are not good things that we need to deal with. So if we're going to have a conversation about violence against men, and I think we do, we need to have it. But it is a separate conversation than the conversation about violence against women. The root causes of both are the same. Patriarchy. It's an asshole. We know this. But the thing is, and the whole point of talking about Game of Thrones, is that Game of Thrones just epitomizes that culture, and the apologists for Game of Thrones and shows like it, or shows like Dexter, or, any of the top dramas on TV, which are all murder TV shows, we have to address violence in society as a whole and why we have this. It's not easy to address all of this, but women should be able to talk about violence against women. Men should be able to talk about violence against women without deflecting or redirecting the conversation back to men. So if you're watching these videos and you're getting defensive, then you have something to say, and you need to say it. It's only been in the past decade, maybe, that men have felt comfortable talking about sexual abuse that they've endured as a kid, as a teenager, or even as an adult. So when you think about the violence against men, most of the violence against men is perpetrated by other men. So we need to have this conversation. And so I'm glad that these videos are getting people talking, because that's what I want. I want people talking. We need change, and it does not happen. Change cannot happen if we stay silent. We have to speak up. We have to speak out. We have to know that our voices are being heard. It's the only way that we can stop any of this violence. You see, I'm a pacifist. I don't want violence against men or boys any more than I want violence against women or girls. But we have to speak up and speak out about it. And you cannot get defensive when one group of people is talking about the violence that they encounter. Sexual harassment of women is a real thing. Rape of women is a real thing. Just like harassment and rape of men is a real thing, but it's in a different way or different circumstances. We need to talk about it, and we need to deal with it as a culture, as a society, but we can't do that when men are getting defensive and constantly trying to blame women for having voices and having emotions and having issues with being violated. So let's have the conversation. We need it as a culture, as a society. We need to change our media. We need to change things. And that only comes from talking and conversation, and from getting the word out that as a culture, we will no longer financially support violence in our culture, violence in our media, violence in our society. So there are many ways to go about this, and starting conversation, starting this dialogue is how we begin to make these changes. So, you didn't like the video yesterday? Oh well. You don't like the video today? I can't help you. This is just my opinion, and you are welcome to leave a comment. All right, I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.